My girlfriend smirked and said, "My ex is back in town and wants to catch up. You don't need to know the details." I said, "Sure." I canceled our luxury cruise, got the refund, and booked a solo trip. When she texted, "Where are you?" I sent her a beach selfie. My name's Peter Williams, and I'm 29 years old. The first thing that broke through my exhaustion was the smirk on the face of Marilyn Carter, my girlfriend. She was sitting across from me on the couch, her phone screen glowing on the coffee table between us. "My ex is back in town," she said, her tone light and airy, like she was announcing a change in the weather. "We need to catch up. You don't need the details." Her eyes flicked toward me, holding a challenge. She wanted a reaction. A fight, maybe, some kind of drama to validate whatever decision she'd clearly already made. I didn't give her one. My gaze drifted from her face to my laptop screen, where the booking confirmation was still open. It was a PDF from an exclusive charter line, a 7-night island-hopping trip through the Bahamas. The total, $8,950, was listed in bold, marked, paid in full. I'd added another $1,200 for excursions, planning private dinners on the beach, and a guided scuba dive through a sunken wreck. This was supposed to be our 3-year anniversary trip, the grand gesture meant to fix the cold, quiet distance that had settled between us like a layer of dust on every surface of our life. I looked back at her, at the carefully constructed indifference on her face, and I felt nothing. No anger, no heartbreak. Just a quiet, clinical clarity. All the little data points of the last few months suddenly clicked into a single, undeniable picture. The trip wasn't a repair job. It was a goodbye party I hadn't been invited to. I just nodded slowly. "Sure," I said, my voice flat. Marilyn seemed disappointed by my lack of a fight. A flicker of frustration crossed her face before she smoothed it over with another practiced smile. She stood up, grabbing her keys and the small, expensive purse I'd bought her for her birthday. "Great, I won't be too late probably," she said, and then she was gone, leaving for a night of catching up on things I didn't need to know. The moment the front door clicked shut, the sound echoing in the silent condo, I didn't get angry. I didn't punch a wall or throw a glass. I just opened a new tab on my browser. I had a departure to coordinate. This one was just mine. My job is to make sure million-dollar catamarans leave the Miami marina on time, loaded with the right people and the right supplies. I live by manifests, schedules, and contingency plans. My entire professional life is about preventing problems before they can start, or solving them with ruthless efficiency when they do. A delayed passenger from Dubai? I'll have a car waiting. A last-minute request for a case of vintage French champagne that only exists in one wine cellar in South Beach? Give me an hour. I've troubleshot engine sensor glitches from my desk using a grainy video call with a stressed-out mechanic bobbing in the Atlantic. I've always believed that a problem is just a set of variables you haven't arranged correctly yet. I had approached my relationship with Marilyn the same way. I'd spent the last 6 months working overtime, taking every extra shift I could, stacking my paychecks to afford this trip. I saw our growing distance as a logistical problem. The input variables were my effort, our shared history, and this grand, expensive gesture. The desired output was our relationship, fixed and functional again. I saw every unanswered text, every dinner I cooked that she barely touched while scrolling through her phone, not as a personal rejection, but as a data point. The math just wasn't adding up, and I was convinced I was just missing a variable. I thought this trip, the sun, the ocean, the forced intimacy of a 45-foot boat would be the final, crucial input that made the whole equation work. The signs had been there for months, of course, like a tide slowly going out and revealing the ugly, rusted debris on the seafloor. Her phone, which used to be left on the kitchen counter or the arm of the couch, was suddenly always screened down or tucked away in her purse. I noticed the new passcode when she angled her body away from me one evening, her fingers tapping a sequence I'd never seen before. She'd laughed it off when I asked, saying it was a new policy for work security, but her eyes never quite met mine. The easy questions that used to be part of our daily routine became intolerable burdens for her. A simple, "Where were you?" after she came home hours later than she said she would was met with a defensive snap. "Why are you tracking me? I'm an adult." Every inquiry felt like an accusation to her, and every conversation became a minefield where I was constantly stepping in the wrong place. This trip was my final, grand-scale attempt to fix it, to force a hard reset on a system that was clearly failing. That $8,950 felt less like a vacation payment and more like a desperate investment. The $1,200 for excursions felt like a bonus I was offering, for her to please just try. I was trying to buy back the woman I'd fallen in love with, the one who used to laugh at my stupid jokes and hold my hand when we walked down the street. So when she dropped that grenade about Derek Lawson, her ex, with that smug little smirk, it wasn't a shock. It was just the final, missing piece of data that I needed. It made the whole ugly picture perfectly clear. She didn't want our relationship to be fixed. She wanted it to be over, and she wanted me to be the stable, comfortable harbor she could dock at while she tested the waters with him. I didn't sleep that night. After she left, I just sat on the couch in the dark, the pale glow of my laptop screen lighting up the new spreadsheets I was making. These weren't about budgets or vacation plans. These were about logistics, exit strategies. I had one spreadsheet for the charter, another for the condo, and a third for personal assets. It felt familiar, calming. I was taking a chaotic, emotional situation and breaking it down into a series of manageable tasks. I was turning my pain into a project plan. Around 2 in the morning, a faint buzz vibrated across the coffee table. It was her phone, which she'd forgotten in her hurry to leave. The screen lit up, displaying a notification banner against her wallpaper, a picture of us from a year ago, smiling on a beach. The message was from a contact saved simply as D. The preview was short, brutal, and to the point. Last night was amazing. Can't wait to do it again. Last night, not tonight. This wasn't a catch-up. This was an ongoing series. There was no surge of rage, no sudden urge to smash the phone against the wall. It was just confirmation, a final, irrefutable variable slotting neatly into place. All the questions, all the doubts, all the anxieties of the past few months evaporated in that single instant. It wasn't my fault. It wasn't something I could have fixed. It was a choice she had made and was continuing to make. I picked up my own phone, lined it up with her screen, and took a clear, high-resolution photo of the message. I didn't do it to use against her. I had no intention of ever speaking to her about this. I did it for me. It was the final item on a checklist I didn't even know I was making, the definitive proof I needed to silence any future voice in my head that might whisper, "What if you were wrong?" My plan, which had been a theoretical exercise just a few hours ago, was now concrete. It was time to execute. I pulled out a legal pad and a pen from my work bag and started a new list, my handwriting crisp and clear in the dim light of the living room. This was my element. I wasn't a heartbroken boyfriend anymore. I was an operations coordinator with a critical departure to manage. Item 1, charter line. I wasn't going to call the general customer service number and sit on hold. I had the direct line for the overnight booking manager, a guy I'd worked with a dozen times on late-night manifest changes. He owed me a favor or two. Item 2, building management. I opened my laptop again and pulled up the sublet agreement for our condo. I scanned it quickly. My name, Peter Williams, was the only one on the lease. Marilyn was listed, but only as a permitted occupant, a resident with privileges granted by me, the official leaseholder. More importantly, I had a saved email from the building owner, a snowbird who lived in New York most of the year, giving me full written authorization to manage resident credentials and all move-out logistics with the building office. It was a document I'd requested when we first moved in, just in case. I'm a planner after all. Item 3, belongings. I wasn't going to have a screaming match at the door or find my things thrown out on the street. I mapped out a controlled retrieval process. No drama in the lobby, no public scenes. Just a clean, managed exit that protected my peace and my security deposit. Item 4, secure exit. The final piece. I knew Marilyn. She'd come back late, see the evidence of my departure, and start a storm of calls and texts. I had no interest in being a part of it. I went to a hotel website and booked a room at a small, clean place near the marina for the night. I wouldn't be there when her key fob stopped working. I wouldn't be there for the explosion. I'd be miles away, getting a full night's sleep. My first call was to the charter company just after 3 in the morning. "Hey, it's Peter Williams. Sorry for the late call, but I need to make an urgent change to a booking." 5 minutes later, it was done. A $950 change fee was charged to my card, and the booking for 2 was officially split. Marilyn's name was removed from the manifest. I used the credit from her canceled spot to upgrade myself to the master suite. Then, I had the departure time moved up by an hour, from 9 a.m. to 8 a.m. sharp. My second task was composing an email. I addressed it to Karen Mills, the building office manager, a woman I knew to be efficient and by the book. I attached the owner's authorization letter and the signed early termination form for the lease. I went to the building's online portal and paid the $1,200 early termination fee. In the body of the email, I laid out my instructions with precision. Effective at 6 a.m. Tomorrow morning, please deactivate the key fob associated with resident Marilyn Carter. She is no longer a permitted occupant. She is granted escorted access via the front desk for the next 7 days, by appointment only, to retrieve her personal belongings. Please have security accompany her. After 7 days, any remaining items should be considered abandoned. I packed quickly and quietly, a single duffel bag with a week's worth of shorts, shirts, my laptop, my passport, and a book I'd been meaning to read. I didn't even glance at her closet, overflowing with clothes, or the shelves filled with pictures of us smiling in happier times. Those belonged to a different life, and that man was no longer here. On the kitchen counter, next to her forgotten phone, I left her car keys. Beside them, I placed a single, neatly folded piece of paper, a printout of the email I'd sent to Karen Mills. That was her only explanation. Then, I picked up my duffel bag, walked out of the condo, and didn't look back. The hotel room was sterile and silent. There were no pictures on the walls, no half-used makeup on the bathroom counter, no little reminders of a life shared with someone else. It was beautifully, wonderfully empty. I dropped my bag on the floor, walked over to the window, and looked out at the city lights. I didn't feel sad or angry, I just felt light. A weight I didn't even realize I'd been carrying for months had been lifted. I ordered room service, a burger and fries, and ate it at the small desk overlooking the city. For the first time in what felt like a year, my phone wasn't a source of anxiety. I wasn't waiting for a text that might not come. I wasn't dreading a call that would turn into an argument. The silence was a relief. After I ate, I opened my laptop one last time. I went into my cloud storage and found the folder labeled Us. It was filled with thousands of photos and videos from the last 3 years. I methodically selected all of them, transferred them to a single, compressed folder on an external hard drive, and then deleted the originals from the cloud. When the transfer was complete, I ejected the drive and placed it in the hotel room drawer. A digital amputation. Clean and final. I set my alarm for 5 a.m. I had a boat to catch. The revenge wasn't going to be a loud, explosive confrontation. It wasn't a tearful fight in our living room. It was the quiet, irreversible click of a lock, both on a door and on a life we no longer shared. I woke up before my alarm, feeling more rested than I had in a year. The sky outside the hotel window was a deep, inky blue, just beginning to soften at the edges. I made a cup of the terrible hotel room coffee and sat by the window, sipping it while the city slowly woke up. Idly, I picked up my phone and opened a social media app. I was just scrolling, killing time, when a new post popped up. It was from a mutual friend, a gallery of photos from a birthday party the night before. I swiped through the first 2 pictures, groups of people smiling, holding drinks. Then I got to the third one. And there she was. Marilyn was laughing, her head thrown back in a way I hadn't seen in months. Draped possessively around her waist was the arm of Derek Lawson. His smirk was just as self-satisfied as hers had been earlier in our living room. They weren't catching up over drinks. They were picking up exactly where they had left off, and they weren't hiding it. Seeing it didn't hurt. It didn't even sting. It was just a final, objective confirmation that my manifest was correct. The passenger I'd removed was indeed ticketed for a different journey. It erased the last, lingering shred of doubt. It solidified everything. I put down my coffee, opened my messaging app, and pulled up her contact for the last time. I typed out a single clean text. "We're done. Don't come to the marina." I hit send. Then, before she could possibly have time to read it or reply, I blocked her number. I went through every single app on my phone, social media, messaging services, payment apps, everything, and meticulously blocked her profile. I was severing every digital tie. Total radio silence, effective immediately. No arguments, no pleading, no angry rebuttals, just nothing. Walking onto the pier before sunrise felt like stepping into another world. The usual daytime hustle of Miami was gone, replaced by a quiet stillness. The water in the marina was as smooth as dark glass, and the only sounds were the gentle creaking of ropes against their cleats and the distant cry of a gull. The air was cool and clean. I bought a black coffee from the small marina cafe that was just opening up and stood by the railing, watching the two-man crew of my charter, the Odyssey, prepping for departure. They moved with a quiet, practiced efficiency that I appreciated. For a second, standing there in the pre-dawn glow, the weight of the last 3 years hit me. I could almost feel the ghost of the man I was just 24 hours ago standing beside me. He was the guy who'd booked this trip with such high hopes, the guy who genuinely believed that a grand gesture could somehow paper over deep, fundamental cracks. He was the fixer, the planner, the one who always tried to make things right, who believed in second chances and thought love was a problem you could solve with enough effort and the right strategy. I felt a sudden, sharp pang of sadness for him. He'd been the safe harbor, the reliable port in a storm, and his services were no longer required. He had tried his best, and he had failed. But as the first rays of sun broke over the horizon, casting a golden light across the water, I realized I wasn't him anymore. That man had been left behind in the hotel room drawer with the hard drive. I took a final sip of my coffee, crushed the paper cup in my hand, and tossed it into a nearby trash can. Then I turned and walked toward the boat. My boat. As my friend Violet Morgan, a woman who knows everything about everyone, would later tell me, Marilyn arrived at the private marina security gate at 8:45 a.m. She was a full 15 minutes after my original departure time, but 45 minutes before she thought she was due. She was probably nursing a headache and running on 4 hours of sleep, but she'd managed to put on perfume. She strode up to the gate with an air of entitlement and gave her name to Grant Rivera, the dockmaster. I'd known Grant for years. He was a retired Coast Guard officer, a man who lived and breathed by rules and regulations, which is precisely why I knew he was the perfect person for this job. He scanned the digital manifest on his tablet without looking up. "I'm sorry, ma'am," he said, his voice a gravelly monotone. "I don't have a Marilyn Carter on the manifest for the Odyssey." Her annoyance was immediate. "That has to be a mistake," she'd said, her voice sharp. "Check again. I'm with Peter Williams." Grant looked up from his tablet then, his face completely impassive. He gave her a long, slow look. "Mr. Williams is on this list," he confirmed. "He's listed as a solo passenger, and his check-in is complete. He's already boarded." The annoyance turned to confusion, then to dawning panic. She stepped back, pulling out her phone. That's when the call started. A frantic barrage of texts that I would never see. "Where are you? Peter, this isn't funny. They won't let me in. What's going on?" They all flew out into the digital void I had so carefully constructed. Her panic, I'm told, quickly escalated into a full-blown meltdown right there at the security gate. While she was starting to cause a scene with Grant, I was being greeted at the top of the gangway by Captain Lucas Bennett, the charter captain, a sun-weathered man with kind eyes. He checked my name on his own tablet. Peter Williams. "Welcome aboard the Odyssey." He glanced around. "Just you, Peter?" he asked with a friendly, knowing smile. "Guess that means you get the master suite all to yourself, more room to stretch out." I just nodded, a small smile touching my own lips. "Sounds good, Lucas." I stepped onto the polished teak deck of the catamaran. The twin diesel engines were already humming beneath my feet, a low, powerful thrum that vibrated up through the soles of my shoes. It was the sound of escape. I went below deck and stored my single duffel bag in the spacious master suite at the front of the boat, the one with panoramic windows that was supposed to be ours. It felt enormous and empty, and I loved it. I walked back out onto the stern deck just as the crew cast off the lines. The boat began to pull smoothly away from the dock. I leaned against the railing and looked back toward the shore. Far in the distance, past the rows of gleaming white yachts, I could just make out a small, frantic figure gesturing wildly at the security gate. It was too far to see her expression, but I could imagine it perfectly. I took my phone out of my pocket for the last time. I turned it on, opened the camera, and took a single, clear selfie. The morning sun was warm on my face. The Miami skyline was shrinking behind me, and the brilliant blue of the open ocean was ahead. I sent it to her. My final message read, "Enjoy your privacy." Then I powered my phone off, dropped it into my bag, and faced the new horizon. The next 7 days were marked by a profound and healing silence. I read 3 novels from cover to cover. I swam in water so clear and blue, it felt like being suspended in liquid sky, where you could see your own shadow on the white sand 30 feet below. I went snorkeling and saw coral reefs teeming with colors I didn't know existed. I ate fresh fish that Captain Lucas grilled on the deck. Captain Lucas Bennett was a quiet, steady presence. He seemed to understand, without me saying a word, that I wasn't there for conversation. He'd point out a pod of dolphins playing in our wake, or share a short story about a rogue wave he'd encountered off the coast of Bimini, but he never asked about why I was alone. He never pried. He just let me be, and for that, I was immensely grateful. In that quiet on that water, I learned how to breathe again. I hadn't realized how shallow and tight my breathing had become over the last year, always braced for a sigh of disappointment, a dismissive comment, or the start of another pointless argument. Out there, with nothing but the sun and the sea, my lungs finally relaxed. I didn't think about Marilyn or Derek. I thought about what book I'd read next, or whether I'd go for a swim or just lay on the warm deck and listen to the waves. My entire world had become blissfully small, beautifully simple, and entirely my own. The day after I got back to Miami, I met my friend Violet Morgan for a beer at a waterfront bar. The first thing she said when she saw me was, "Wow, you look lighter." I smiled. "I feel lighter." She filled me in on the news, which she gathered through our network of friends. Marilyn's meltdown at the marina had been epic. It was followed by a frantic, tearful attempt to move in with Derek, who apparently wasn't interested in a full-time girlfriend who came with so much drama. He wanted the fun and the sneaking around, not the reality of a live-in partner. He ghosted her within 48 hours of my departure. The key fob deactivation had worked perfectly. She had a screaming fit with the building security guard when she couldn't get into the condo and had to be escorted out of the lobby. She eventually made an appointment and retrieved her things, under the watchful eye of a guard, 2 days later. She was now couch surfing between 2 of her friends, her welcome already wearing thin. To top it all off, she'd finally confessed to Violet about a hidden credit card with a $3,200 balance she'd been racking up and hiding from me. With no place to live and no safety net, she was selling her designer handbags on the internet to make the minimum payments. I listened to all of this, just nodding. I took a long sip of my cold beer and looked out at the boats in the harbor. Then I changed the subject. My old condo was already gone. The management had processed the early termination and leased it to someone else before I even got back. I was moving into a smaller, simpler place next week. It was closer to the marina, closer to my new life. That's my story of how I dealt with a cheater. It wasn't loud, but it was final. Have you ever had to pull the plug on a relationship like this? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories.